All right. Hello, hello, hello. All right, all right, all right. That is my best, what's his name? Matthew McConaughey impression. How is everybody tonight? Alice, welcome. It's so great to see you.
Yeah. Oh, that came in a bit. Good to be here, Rhonda. As always, good to be here.
Yeah, I love having you here, and I think my audience comes to see
To be
you
here, Rhonda.
more
As
than they do
always,
to hear me. So you know what? You're a great draw.
good.
Let me
Not at all. Not at all. They come and see you just as much as me.
Oh gosh. Um, let me just say hi to a couple of people in the chat. Robski, thank you so much for being here with us. And Alice in the chat, and Alice on the panel. And we have Claire View. Claire, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your support again. And I know you've had some stuff going on today. I thought I didn't get a chance, but I thought that you had a live that you were doing today or something. So I will watch that. I will watch that later this evening. And Shaz, it's been a while. I haven't seen you for quite a while. So welcome back. Um, and Kit the cat, the KK Katie, will be joining us soon. And we just had my twin sister Cherie pop into the panel. So hello, Cherie.
Hello. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Just curious if I'm playing with some new stuff in. Oh, okay. Okay. Good to know, Claire. I will. I'll try and catch it later tonight. Then I won't miss it live. I'd rather be live with you so I can chat with all your great chatters than to watch it in replay. So that'll be great. Um, well, thanks, Robsky. I appreciate that. We're going to tonight. We're going to kind of talk. Hey, T1. Hey, T1. Welcome back. Thank you. Stop, collaborate, and listen. Rhonda's back with a brand new edition. MLR, everyone. Thanks, T1. Oh, I just think that's awesome. So yeah, thanks everyone for being here with us. I'm just curious in the chat if you can tell me if you can hear a little bit of background music back there as we're chatting. I just hit a 1 or something if you can hear it. Just stuff I'm playing with in StreamYard that's kind of new. So just fun stuff that they give you for free, which isn't very much anymore. But anyway, so tonight we're going to kind of talk about way back in 2021. Okay, thanks, Claire. I appreciate that. Oh, okay, good. I mean, I won't leave it running the whole time because it might get annoying, but I just, like I said, something I'm playing with. So, but I can lower the volume on it. So that's kind of cool. It lets you play. It's got several different little background music things you can play. Different acoustic, cinematic, dance pop, daydreaming, different little names. So yeah, we'll just play with it and see. So we had done several lives or podcasts sometime last year, and we had started the one for Tabitha Barnes, and I think we did 2, maybe 3 videos on her because her case is so twisted and can you make requests? I wish you could make requests. If it's royalty free and I can get it, absolutely you can make a request. Otherwise I get in trouble. But her story, Tabitha Barnes has 3 incidents or allegations, 3 separate allegations, and so her story got really, really twisted. And Rocky Gregory was the investigator who was investigating her case, and he lied for her, and he helped her make shit up, and it was just all over the place. And So we had gotten really, really deep into it in the first couple that we did. And so you're welcome to go back and watch those if you want from, I don't know, do you recall when they were, Cherie? Sometime in 2021. I don't remember exactly when.
Seems like the spring, but I can't give you an exact date.
Yeah, it could have been the springtime sometime, but I think they're labeled as Tabitha Barnes Part 1 or Tabitha Barnes Part 2, something like that. But you can go back if you want to and watch those videos and see, kind of the beginning of her first two allegations, I think it was. But she actually has several events that occur in all of her allegations. And so it got really, really difficult to try to cover hers and point out all the lies and, and all that stuff. So what we've decided, and there is our friend Katie did it. Hello. Welcome.
Hello.
Let's see. T1 has a question. Her 3 other accusations, did they come before or after Daniel's case? Oh no, all these were all allegations against Daniel. All 3 of her allegations were against Daniel. But there's definitely inconsistencies that we were able to find. So anyway, we have a information sheet, I guess, if you will, that we're going to kind of just go through and hit some of the major issues of it, and then we'll here on the panel, and of course, if you have questions or comments in the chat, we want to address those too. But we'll just kind of address it with you that way, and then you might be able to put together some of it in the prior videos that we did back last spring or something, whatever it was. So let's start with some hellos. We said hello to everybody in the chat. That's amazing. Alice, do you have any fabulous things you'd like to say to us today?
Just hello, lovely ladies. It was good to be back on with you, and I'm looking forward to this. And yes, as you say, Rhonda, Tabitha Barnes is a whole load of different to the rest of the other cases, so it'll be good for others to actually understand and learn. And I'm just going to post the link just now to the Tabitha Barnes video part 1, and then people can get part 2 and part 3 after that.
Right. Yeah, thank you. So probably not everybody's enjoying the background music, so I'll turn that off. It was just something to play with. But anyway, so and we will be able to, like I said, between the 4 of us here, we'll be able to fill in some blanks or some sketchy spots to help new people to the case understand it a little bit better, if possible. We don't even understand it because it's so twisty and dark and convoluted. So, so let's see. T1 says, "Oh, okay. So mixed facts sounds like fabrication to me." There's a whole ton of fabrication in this. Absolutely. Well, in all of the cases, but when you have one accuser that's making 3 separate allegations on 3 separate days, it gets even more twisted. So, so we will do our best to try to help you with that. Kay, what new stuff do you have to offer us today in the way of how hot it is in hellish Oklahoma?
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I was trying to pull up a document and off the page, so I couldn't unmute.
Oh, it's okay.
It's just brutal here. But, it's that way all across the country. So just sitting around with an ice pack on my head.
Yeah. I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Just been in the case for, we've been inside the case for 8 and 9 hours a day for the past several days doing some projects, and
so we have some headaches going on for real.
It's just so frustrating to read that shit.
I just broke from that. We just broke from that project a half hour or so, maybe 20 minutes before we were going to start here. So forgive us if we are a little goofy and twisted and sidetracked, because it's probably the way it's going to be for the whole time.
Talked to Daniel this afternoon. He got a cell back to himself, so that's good. They've been moving a bunch of prisoners around, and it's pretty overcrowded, but he's in a solo cell again, so, you know, that's like Christmas in prison. Not much going on. Same old thing, different day in prison.
Yeah. Yeah, hard times for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and of course I don't know because I've not been there, but you know, I remember from when my brothers were, both of my brothers spent time in prison. One was 4 years and the other was 5 years. And, you know, I don't recall that it was ever really very pleasant, you know, environment, elements wise, as far as being overly cool or, you know, comfortably cool or comfortably warm. It was just like you might imagine. And so I just hope wherever these men are in prisons anywhere, that they're not being ignored as far as their, you know, human comfort and things like that.
It doesn't seem to be affecting him. He's so weird. He like, if it's really cold and I comment about how cold it is and I'm freezing, he always says, "Oh man, I love to be real cold." If it's really hot and I'm complaining about that, he says, "Oh man, I love it when it's really hot." So I don't know if that's just like a game he plays with himself to get through things that are different. Well, I know he does things like that to, you know, get through. He does all kinds of mind games, but
he probably has to. Yeah, a lot of psyching himself out for, you know, for different environments and things. So Jack from Foul Play has popped onto the panel. How are you doing, Jack?
What up, people? What up?
What up, Jack?
What up? Did you miss my my introduction, my Matthew McConaughey impression?
I did miss it. Go for it again.
All right.
We'll have her talking Southern in no time.
She's gonna have to practice a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. She don't quite have that Joe Exotic sound yet, but
Oh
we'll
my
work
gosh.
on her.
Let's don't go that far.
Well, we can do a Joe Exotic light, not a full-on Joe Exotic, because that would
Okay.
get weird.
Okay.
You guys are killing me already.
Sorry.
It's fine. Robsky says, "Thank goodness that the UK is back to regular temperatures. We are happy for you."
No kidding. Good for you.
Yeah, I heard it's hot as hell over there for a few days.
Yeah, that's what abnormally hot.
Well, you guys aren't set up for that, Robsky.
Yeah, that's rough.
No, that's just it. I mean, our houses and that are built to keep the heat in, not to let the heat out, you know. And I mean, it was at least at one point. I mean, down in England, it was up to 40 degrees, and we do it in Celsius. And that's a lot for us, you know. And I mean, yous are probably like 40 degrees Celsius, you know. But for us, that is a lot, you know. I mean, everybody's
that's 104 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, which is bad. Which is bad for you guys for sure.
It really is. I mean, if we get above 20, if we get above 25, 26, Rhonda, that's bad for us, you know. And some places, I mean, here in Scotland, some of your places were hitting like 33 degrees Celsius. And down in England, it was 40 degrees Celsius. And as you say, I mean, we're not used to that weather. You see everybody going about with a beetroot red backs and
Yeah.
everything like that because they've sat in the sun too long. And
Yeah. Yep.
all men are out with their shorts and their flip flops with a t-shirt.
All you fair-skinned little Irish and
On the
Scottish
milk
and
bottles,
English folks.
on the milk bottles walking down the street.
Hi, Dark Side. Welcome. We're so happy to have you. All right. Well, I ended up starting a little bit later today just because of the project we've been working on. And so, and I know that Cherie is very, very buried up to her eyeballs in motions and things that she's writing for work. And I don't want to like wear everybody out and make this go on for hours like the other night, which, by the way, I was really impressed because even though it was like a 3 hour long, little over 3 hours long, which is, I don't think I've ever done one that's been that long, but I feel like I felt good about it because I kept an engaged audience of 10 or about 10 at least for quite a while. And that was a pretty big deal for us. So
Let me tell you, all members of the team members from the open mic gang, we're really proud of you. You did that. That was great.
and then I stayed that long. Yeah, yeah, you should
Right.
be. Kay was like, "Oh my God, 3 hours." I said, "I know." But we did give a lot of information. One thing really, really quick before I get started on Tabitha Barnes, though, I meant to mention a little bit more information about another case that I'm going to start looking at as soon as I get the information from this person. But there's also another wrongful conviction case in Oklahoma City or Oklahoma. Surprise, it's out of Tulsa. And he actually reached out. This gentleman actually reached out to Foul Play to see if Foul Play could, if there was anything Foul Play could help him do in his case. And so he's not in prison now, but he needs to clear his name. He's a former deputy, I believe, and his name is Gerald Nichols or Gerald Knuckles. I'm so sorry if I said your last name wrong, but I'm waiting on some information, and as soon as we can get some information from him, I will try to start looking at it. And Foul Play was happy to do it. I know they were, but somebody tagged me in a Discord message and said it, and I was like, wow! So I went to Twitter and found him, and we got hooked up. So I, just wanted to let you guys know that that's something else that we're going to be looking at. He's there. He's got a little bit of a TikTok video, and I'll try to remember to get that in my description here tonight if I can remember. I forgot to put stuff in for last week's description too, and I'm so sorry. But at any rate, I forgot to kind of go into more detail about him last week, so I apologize, Gerald. But once we get some more information, I will definitely, and I know I'll get other people too, people from Foul Play and from Daniel's Discord and everything. We'll start looking at it for you to see what we can do. So I'm excited about it. I mean, if there's a wrongful conviction, we want to help, clear it. And if they're in prison wrongfully, we want to try to help with that. And this one I think is about helping to clear a name and get some information and get some facts out and some truth out about his case. He did tell me, I don't think I cannot say this, but he did mention that he believes this deputy from Tulsa, former deputy, believes that his accuser, because his case was all going on just about like a month behind everything that happened in Daniel's case. And there's some speculation perhaps that his accuser used what was going on in Daniel's case to work her scheme up to wrongfully accuse him of some acts. So we are, like I said, he's no longer incarcerated, but he does need to get some information, I think, for appeals. And well, I guess what I should say is he served his time, I guess is what it comes down to, I believe. Like I said, I don't know very many details, but Gerald, if you're listening, I just want you to know you're still on in my mind, and I'm not gonna just let it go. So, all right. So I don't know. Kay kind of has like some bullet points that I had mentioned. I don't know, Kay, if you want to share any if you want to screen share anything or not. If you do, please, by all means, go ahead and do that. But we're going to just go ahead and start talking about Tabitha Barnes. So, Kay, do you want to? Sheree, I don't know if you have the bullet points that we're talking about or not, so that you could help us. Kay, do you want to start going over the beginning part of that? Or it's up to you.
Oh, knock yourself out. I feel unprepared.
Oh, me too. Me too. I'm just as unprepared, so it's all good. But we'll get it to you, and then we'll just anybody on the panel chime in, chat. If you have any questions or comments, please chime in. Okay, so Tabitha Barnes. On Tabitha Barnes, so for those of you who don't know, there are 13 accusers. All 13 accusers were addressed in one trial. So there's 13 cases essentially in one trial. It was it's very, very difficult to get through. So this one is Tabitha Barnes, and on Tabitha, he was found guilty on three counts, 2 counts of procuring lewd exhibition and 1 count of sexual battery. He was acquitted on 2 counts, burglary in the first degree and stalking. So if that gives you some kind of an idea of how many storylines or how many accusations she has. So when the date that her allegations were solicited by the detectives, in this case Rocky Gregory, that occurred on August 14th of 2014. And she has, like I said, 3 separate dates. One was February 27th of 2014. The next one was March 25th of 2014. And then the stalking charge, which he was acquitted on, was on March 26th of 2014. There were 5 counts and verdicts, and he was sentenced in all of the things that he was found guilty on. He was sentenced to 18 years on her charges. So for number 1, the count 1, the sexual battery, he was found guilty. Count 3, the burglary in the first degree, it was acquittal. Count 4, number 4 was indecent exposure, guilty. Number 5, indecent exposure, guilty. And number 6, stalking, was an acquittal. Her age at the time of these alleged assaults, she was 41 years old. And I don't know, I suppose I could show you a picture of her so you have an idea of what she looks like during this time. Okay, I'm going to leave that to you. Do you think I should? Or, I mean, it's public information. It's not like it's a secret.
Oh, no, sure. Go ahead.
Let's blast it. Let's show the people what she looked like around this time. Okay, let me find her picture really quick. Because it's quite disturbing to see. Well, I don't know. It brings a lot of interesting comments, and I don't necessarily want to do that. But hey, everybody can think what they want with when they see things. So you guys can make your own decision and your own ideas about what you think about her appearance. It's not a very large photo, so hopefully you can see it. But let me see if I can get it there for you. I keep telling them I don't want to see that same message again. Okay, so I don't know how well you're going to be able to see that. But that was a mugshot from one of her, let me go into put this on a bigger screen in StreamYard. Maybe that'll help a little bit. Anyway, hopefully you can see that a little bit. Kind of an idea of what she looked like around that time, of the time that she made the accusation. I don't know exact date. This is one of her mugshots, but I don't know the exact date of it. So she claimed that the allegation was she claimed that when Mr. Holtzclaw interacted with her on 3 different days, and while he was asking if she had drugs on her, she claims that he told her to expose her breasts and that he touched her bare breasts with his hands, his bare hands to her bare breasts. And I think I might have mentioned last week that in the report that she gave to Detective Gregory, or that he helped her with, that she claims that Officer Holtzclaw took each breast in one hand, each of his hands, and then held them up, and then just dropped them and let them go. And I remember at one time, Cherie and I don't recall, and we had quite a little bit of fun with that at one point. So it was kind of anyway. So we thought that was funny, and anyway, it's none of it's funny, but we have to joke about this shit sometimes, right? So anyway,
it's just so ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. And so that's what she said, that he touched her bare breast with his bare hands, and he made her expose her crotch to him. Then she also said that he had come to her house and wanted to come in to search it, and that she said on another occasion he entered her house when she wasn't there. And those allegations resulted in 2 counts of procuring lewd exhibition, the touching her breasts with his hands and forcing her to show her crotch to him. And then the 1 count of stalking and 1 count of burglary is how those charges came about. So during her, we're going to show, and you guys have all probably already seen it, but we'll show it at the end. But there's going to be some deposition information that's coming out that to refute that she refutes her own accusations.
Rhonda, I just have to butt in for 10 seconds. And
Please.
I don't mean to be judgmental about this person, but I'm just going to tell you, she's not an attractive woman. Daniel's a pretty attractive dude. I think he could do better. Just if you wanted to just
Come on, Jack. We all know that it's not about that. It's about control.
It's about power and control.
I know, but God.
Yeah,
God help me.
Wow.
No, I'm not going to disagree with you at all. So, but we also want to make sure, we want to make sure too that we're not misrepresenting sexual assaults. But at the same time,
exactly,
I know what you're saying. So,
sexual assaults are about power and control.
They absolutely are.
I mean, I joke about this because it makes me mad, because I've been inside this case for 6 years, and I know without a shadow of a doubt that Daniel is innocent of all these charges.
If they could have shown video of Daniel in 1 or more situations where he was being this power trip controlling type person, there might be some credence to any of it. But my knowledge, they didn't. There is none.
There is none. And if they hadn't used his own police records from his legitimate calls from his workday, and hey, let's just do this. They used the AVL, the GPS from his car, to help the women remember what their story was.
That they gave them.
Right, that they gave them. And we wouldn't think that if they had recorded all the interviews. But, conveniently, that didn't happen. Oklahoma City Police Department. I've said this many times. I was a massage therapist for 20 years. I would never, ever show up to a massage without some massage cream.
Right.
Why in the hell does a detective show up to an interview without a recorder? It's a basic tool. Give me a break. They're corrupt. They have recorders. They use them when it suits them. And when they don't use them, we're left to imagine what happened. And I'm sorry, I don't believe anything that Kim Davis or Rocky Gregory says about this.
Not a word. I don't either. Not a word.
Not a
Yes.
word. And the kicker is they won't give us access to when were these AVL GPS records pulled? The detectives say, oh, we went out, we questioned the women, they told us their story, and then we went back and we pulled the AVL to see if their story matched. No, bullshit. Bullshit. If you did that, you would have no issue whatsoever showing us when those AVL records were pulled. We can't get that information.
Right. That's right. But we have to just rely. We just have to rely on the what they're telling us.
It would reveal their sources and methods. Like that's what some politicians say about why they can't share some things.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Can't have it impede the investigation. Yep,
But
exactly.
they're so dumb, They're just so dumb. Their logic isn't logical. And it just blows my mind that, well, I mean, I guess there were one or two jurors that were holdouts and they just got so tired of or so badgered by the rest of the jurors that they finally said,
Caved.
okay. Yeah.
And that really bothers me, Kay. That really bothers me that they didn't stand their ground and to say, you know what? I'm not voting guilty. It's a mistrial. And see what
Right.
happened.
Well, it was the holidays and people have shit to do.
Yeah.
We're not just we've already been the longest trial in Oklahoma history. And now, the deliberations going on for too long.
Yeah.
But I bet there was a fear factor involved. I bet there was.
Well, there was,
Yeah.
two of the male jurors, one guy, super arrogant guy.
Ron Hill.
Yeah. He said some things, which we know he said some things that weren't true, or else, because isn't he the one who said that the judge came in afterwards and told him some extra things, and so then they knew they made the right decision, and that got out in the press, and then he ended up getting called on the carpet.
Yeah.
And getting called in for that. And I guess it ended up that, he was just actually trying to be a big shot and trying to justify their verdict.
Right.
And it wasn't true.
Right.
And then the other juror that spoke out, man, that guy's wife was dying of cancer and the judge wouldn't let him off the jury.
That's not right. That is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, he lost the last 6 weeks of his wife's life spending with her.
Speaking of Judge Henderson, have we heard anything? Why is there no movement in that case?
Well, we did hear through just Jackie Ford, who was running for DA and on the Republican side, and she got beat out by Giger and Kevin Calvi are in a runoff now for the Republican candidate seat. She posted on Facebook that she heard through her spies at the courthouse. She's a defense attorney in Oklahoma County.
Right.
She heard that the grand jury had completed hearing their testimony on the Henderson case and that they expect some word this week, which they usually do anything related to Daniel's case. And that's obviously going to be Henderson's thing here too, because this hinges on, Daniel getting a new trial or not. Because there still are couple of the women who their names haven't been disclosed. And I just have a really solid feeling that the assistant district attorney, Lori McConnell, is one of those women. And they're not wanting to disclose her name because that is an automatic new trial for Daniel. Anyway, she
That
says
would be
that they
that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
it would be.
Oh,
Anyway,
well, I don't want it. I don't want anybody to get exposed and embarrassed and all that stuff. I'm like you guys, but they got to do the right thing. They got to do the right thing.
Right.
yeah.
Agreed.
So hopefully we'll hear something this week. I would expect that it's going to be on Friday afternoon because that gives it a shorter news cycle.
Right.
That's kind of how information falls out in this case when it's anything that is good for Daniel.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. All right. So, okay. Thank you. That's thanks for discussing those. So Tabitha Barnes has so her first allegation takes place on February 27th of 2014. Now, there's actually two separate incidents that occurred on February 27th, 2014, where Daniel had oh, okay, good. You're in there, Cherie. That's you can help go through these two then. Where Daniel responded to he was in response to both of these incidents. Now, one wasn't a call in, the other one of them was, and the other one was not. Let's see, it's been so long since the 27th around 10 p.m. on the 27th of February, there was a burglary incident. You guys are going to have to help me if I've got these two incidents mixed up in the time. And he responded with several other officers to this burglary call. And in this burglary call, there's a whole bunch of weird stuff that goes on. And somebody in her household makes this burglary call and says that somebody had gone into their home while they were gone and had taken food out of their refrigerator and freezer and stole a microwave oven that was still in the manufacturer's box, and that when they got home, they caught this burglar running out, the women. So Tabitha Barnes and one or two of her daughters and some other random, well, she claimed it was her stepdaughter. Tabitha Barnes claims that it was this other lady was her stepdaughter. But at any rate, we couldn't find any family history that did relate them, but neither here nor there. So one of her daughters, one of Tabitha Barnes' daughters, and I think it was the oldest one, her and this alleged stepdaughter chased this man down, and and you'll see that I have a map of that, I believe, in the first video that I did, the second video, I think, of the Tabitha Barnes that we did. And I have a map that I show where he the path based on the police reports of where this burglar ran. And I guess it's at some point he dropped the microwave oven a block or two over, and dropped the microwave oven. One of the two girls chasing him grabbed a hold of his shirt, and I guess he wiggled out of his shirt, I believe. And then he's running down this next block over, or 2 blocks over. He's running to get away from these two women. And at this point, they've already hit him. And he runs into a tree and knocks himself out. So it's not funny, but it's funny. I feel sorry for this guy. I don't feel sorry for Tabitha Barnes, but I feel sorry for this guy because these two women are chasing him down. And anyway, so he runs into the tree, falls down, knocks himself out, gets a bloody nose, breaks whatever, does all this stuff, contusion or something on his head, whatever happened. And Daniel had responded to that incident, and he actually went to where this burglar had ran into the tree and fell. and Daniel transported him to the hospital on that tree incident falling. And that was pretty much the only thing that Daniel had to do with that case, with that incident on February 27th. And then somehow he transported him to the hospital, and then he left, and somebody else came and took over for Daniel so Daniel could go back out on patrol. So Daniel is patrolling his area, which Tabitha Barnes's house was in, and he's patrolling the area, and he drives by the house, and there's a car sitting in the driveway. Well, this is also twisted. It's either sitting in the driveway or it's sitting on, because Tabitha Barnes's house is on a corner. So it's either in the driveway or it's one of the corners parked on the street. But he notices that the car is running and that there are people inside the car, and it's after midnight at this point. And so he pulls up behind them to inquire, what's going on. And he calls it in. And so another officer, Officer Venegas, comes in to back him up. And in Oklahoma County or Oklahoma City, particularly in Daniel's sector or beat or whatever you want to call it, they didn't have partners. They were all solo drivers. So whenever they went on a call, they were solo. So unless there was a call for extra assistance, hey, TTM fangirl, welcome. Thank you for being here. So unless there was a call for extra assistance or another officer was free, didn't have anything to do, and heard that, he was going to be approaching subjects in a car, then they could voluntarily show up to do backup. And so that's what happened in this case. Officer Venegas heard Daniel calling in, and, he went over to back Daniel up because, he knew that he was approaching a car that was running with 3 individuals in it. And so this is where the first allegation takes place, is that night. Let's see if I can look on this document and get some information from it in particular. So he goes to he wants to talk to these women. Well, they tell him that they're sitting in the car waiting for it to turn past midnight. They were warming up the car. They were waiting for it to turn past midnight because Tabitha Barnes' food stamps were supposed to drop onto her card after midnight. Well, I did some investigating, and that wasn't necessarily true about waiting for food stamps to drop because her last name doesn't coincide with when the food stamps would have dropped on her SNAP card. Her benefits wouldn't have dropped until March 1st, if I'm not mistaken. So it probably doesn't matter, but that was a lie that she was waiting out there for food stamps to drop. So Officer Venegas pulls the one adult female who's in the passenger seat out to his car. And then Daniel takes Tabitha Barnes into his vehicle. And then the young girls that were in the car as well, they were just teenage girls. One was Tabitha's daughter and her friend. I think they were like 12 years old at the time. And they sent them into the house, because they didn't need to be out there. Venegas runs Angela Cooper, who was Tabitha's friend, runs her. She's clear. She gets to go. She goes, leaves his patrol car, goes in the house. And Daniel has his conversation with Tabitha Barnes. And this is where she says that he held her breasts and made her show his crotch to her. And the crotch showing might have actually occurred on the second incident, now that I think about it. But anyway, and then he lets her go. She doesn't have any warrants or anything, and he lets her go, and she goes into the house with the kids. So Rocky Gregory gets a hold of her finally because she's on this list that turns into a packet. Then during trial, this list turns from a packet into a stack of women that I think I mentioned last week that their Lieutenant Musney had given to each of them, Gregory and Davis, to to go and approach all these women. Remember, again, none of these women came to the police. None of these women reported a crime to the police, an assault to the police, ever, other than the stop on June 18th that started the whole thing by Janie Liggins. And then later on, at some point after Daniel's been in the news and he's getting ready for trial and all that stuff, then another lady comes forward and she's like, oh, well, gosh, this officer stopped me on a PCP call that he was on me in December of 2013. And yeah, he sexually assaulted me too. That's Shardarian Hill. And we'll get to her at another time. But because her story is...
That's my problem, Rhonda, with this whole case, the whole Daniel case, is the fact that these 13 accusers never came forward themselves. They didn't go to the police station and say, I need to report an essay by a police officer, yada, yada, yada. Right?
Well, who came forward were 3 actually, but it's not exactly as it seems as far as coming forward. But I'm sorry, go ahead, Alice.
No, I was just getting to that. It was I do believe that some of these women have been assaulted by a police officer, but that police officer was not Daniel. Their description that they gave was a short black man, not a 6 foot, half Japanese, half American bodybuilder cop. You know, even the descriptions are ridiculous. And the fact that we've came out now and we can see that Blinkhall and Dipshit went and looked back on Daniel's computer to find out what stops he went to. You know what I mean? Which, in my opinion, is disgraceful that they were even able to get away with that, and that nobody fought Daniel's corner enough on that fact as well, you know. But in my opinion, the majority of these 13 that have came forward, apart from maybe a couple, I do not believe, and I know we're supposed to believe women and everything like that, but circumstances and that lately, we know women can be bitches, you know what I mean, and they do things to hurt men, because we've all done it at some point or another. We've all said something to a partner that's maybe nasty, but we know that it's going to hurt them, you know what I mean? But the way these women have done this to an innocent man is wrong, and it should have been fought more on Daniel's defence, in my opinion, than what I could see his lawyers actually done.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, and that's a whole other topic of, you know, what did Scott Adams do, his defense counsel? What did he do or what didn't he do that he should have or shouldn't have or whatever? You know, there's, and Kay has said it many times, you know, that Scott Adams, he gets 13 cases thrown in his lap to go to trial on, you know, with he had an investigator, he had Brian Bates, and he had co-counsel, but there's just no way. I mean, we've been a team of people working on this for going on 2 years now for me. And the team of us are struggling to try to get through each individual accuser. So, you know, there's some, I think that the problem with Scott Adams is the strategy that he took, and that's what backfired on Scott Adams for the most part, as far as I can tell so far.
Darkside's asking Rhonda, don't the police have a union or something? Why did they not help Daniel?
They do have a union. They did, and he did have an FOP attorney, and they did not help Daniel. They were not helpful for Daniel at all, obviously. And in that regard, Daniel was actually terminated from the department while he was on leave with pay. He was terminated from the department before he even went to trial. So he hadn't even been accused. I mean, he'd been accused, but he hadn't even been convicted yet, and they had already fired him for these allegations. So, that's unfair in itself. So
Yeah, so the people that were supposed to have his back until the innocent proven guilty actually made him guilty before court and sacked him anyway.
yeah,
The FOP, they appointed an attorney for him for his predetermination hearing, which is, basically his internal trial. And it happened to be the wife of the information officer at the Oklahoma City Police Department. So his attorney is sleeping with a high up Oklahoma City police officer brass every night. What the hell?
yeah. Yeah, there's and that's just a part of conflict of interest in this case, as we all know. So, yeah, it's just really, really difficult to try to. There was just not any point in time where Daniel was treated fairly, and that's just a fact. So, there was some evidence that there was evidence during the trial that could have proven Daniel's innocence, and part of that is that Barnes's testimony at trial wasn't that Daniel told her to raise her shirt or open up her pants, because what he did, typically when officers do a pat search on somebody, or particularly a female, they'll usually, not all the time, I guess, and maybe some departments do make a female come out, but they weren't in a position in Oklahoma City when Daniel was on patrol. They weren't in a position to, have the officer encounter a female suspect and then say, oh, well, hold on, let me get a female officer out here to search you. That wasn't a luxury that they had. And so, as Daniel has explained it, he did a backhand pat search of all of these accusers, but of Tabitha, did the backhand. And so, he would as typical, because he didn't want to touch any skin or anything, he would ask them to, just let me see your waistband, and, pull your shirt out so I can make sure nothing falls out from under your shirt. Well, so that's what he did in Tabitha's case. And he asked her to just, pull her shirt up over her waistband so he could make sure there was nothing in her waistband, and to open, just to pull it out so nothing falls out. Well, she says in trial that she says that Daniel asked to see her breasts or whatever. And so when he said to raise up her shirt, that she assumed that meant that she was supposed to expose herself, which is just silly. That's just asinine. So her suspect description also of the officer who assaulted her didn't really match Daniel. In fact, she ended up giving him a nickname that she used constantly during her testimony at trial and in her deposition that just drives me crazy. But she said that the officer who assaulted her was white, but was kind of like a tan color, like an Indian tan color, not dark, but that he wasn't pale. Well, Daniel is actually quite pale. He's Japanese American descendant, heritage. His mother's Japanese, his father's white. And he had pale skin, nothing. So for Tabitha Barnes to say he wasn't pale, that's pretty significant. And remember, Daniel's sitting in the courtroom at this time, so everybody can see that testimony doesn't match his appearance. So, and then she also says that the officer who attacked her had spiked hair, and that's what she calls him throughout. Anytime she ever speaks of Daniel, she calls him Spike. Oh, you mean Spike? You mean the cop that raped me, or whatever, nasty stuff she says. And it's really, really, it really gets me every time I read or hear that she's saying that, because It's inaccurate for one thing. He had very, very short hair, but it wasn't spiked hair.
I feel like Rocky Gregory kind of made that happen.
Yeah, he
I
kind
mean,
of, yeah.
You can see in his police report how many times he uses the word spike, just like as many times as he can. I think that he planted that in her head.
I think so too.
It's just, Rocky is so transparent because he's so dumb.
He really is. Oh, he really is very transparent. Yeah, and that's how we feel too, Robsky. The more we hear, the more we read, the more we research, the more we know that he's been set up. Absolutely. So, let me see what Shaz said here. I don't care. No one would make me give in. I would stand my ground and not give in, especially because of BLM threatening to riot. That would make me more determined. And there were the beginnings of, they were just on the fringes of racial tension in Oklahoma. The problem is what the investigators say, what they offer for proof, for truth, is that he was holding tickets and warrants and jail time and rehab and whatever else over these women's heads if they didn't perform and do what he insisted that they do. And none of that was true. I mean, none of them had tickets or none of them had warrants. The warrants that any of the women had were city warrants, which were not the kinds of warrants that you take to somebody to jail on, right? I mean, their city warrants are fines for unpaid parking tickets or I don't know, just any number of traffic tickets, really. And if they were unpaid, then the city warrant would go out and they would be, incur more fines. But the officers, I shouldn't say none, but very rarely did an officer take a city warrant in and book them into jail, because that's a 2 or 3 hour process. And that's 2 or 3 hours off the street where they can be finding, in Daniel's case, the true crimes that he was watching for, which were usually, sex related crimes or prostitution rather, or drug crimes and things of that nature. So they make it sound though like he was holding tickets and warrants and all these things over there. If you don't do this, I'm taking you to jail on this or taking you to jail on that. And none of that was ever true.
When in fact, that's probably exactly what the detectives did to get these women to become a part of the case if they didn't come along willingly. I can't imagine what kind of coercions that they used as taking away their kids or what we don't know. Once again, all of the interactions between the accusers and law enforcement are not recorded.
Right.
So, we don't know.
Well,
Claire in chat, Rhonda saying, I agree, sounds like a setup. Who are they actually covering up for? Well, their own bloody mistakes. And the way they went hunting, because they were telling the accusers that they had a list. It was that they had a list of names and that they had anonymous tip-offs that this accuser might have been assaulted by a police officer. And that was how they were answering the phone to these women. They were, this is Detective so-and-so. It was either Gregory or Davis. We've got a list of names and your names came up on that list. Or it was, we've had anonymous tip-off that you were assaulted by a police officer. Can you come in or can we come and talk to you about it? And to me, that's not how an investigation works. You don't lie to somebody and say that their name's on a list or somebody's told them. They do an investigation, and if that's a name that comes up during that investigation, then I try and go and talk to them. But don't go on Daniel's computer and see the only females that he's stopped in a certain area, and certain females with certain reputations and things like that they could easily manipulate to get them to say what they want, i.e., like Kate was saying, what did they hold over these women? You know, oh, your kids could get taken away from you. We'll knock some. We'll speak to so and so, and we'll try and get something knocked off your sentence. We'll get you into a drugs rehab facility. You know, get you back on your feet and everything like that.
And that they're
And
entitled to a civil suit settlement too.
Yeah.
You'll be
yeah,
entitled
exactly.
to this money.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly, Kay. Giving them incentives to get them to say what they want, manipulating them and get what they want, you know, and it's only trying to cover their own asses. And it's ridiculous and it's disgusting what they've done to Daniel. And Daniel should not be sitting in a fucking jail cell for 263 years because some women thought that they could jump on the bandwagon and ruin a man's life.
Right. And they don't care. They don't care that he's in prison for something that they know he didn't do to them.
Well,
Absolutely.
at that time, you know, summer 2014, when everything was heating up really hot, with all the shit that was going on around the United States. First of all, you know, Scott Adams didn't seem to be tuned into that at all, or he wouldn't have chosen the defense that he chose, as far as, you know, just saying that they're liars and prostitutes and drug addicts and criminals and they can't be believed, which, you know, is pretty much true when you get into the case and start looking at everything. But that just was not a good defense for that time in history. It didn't work out. I lost my train of thought of where I was going. I can't jump back to something and then jump forward. So as soon as I mute, I'll think of it.
Of course. That's fine. And we all do that. So you're not alone for sure. Robsky says, to me, it sounds like there was even more to it. Perhaps Daniel was rocking the boat without even knowing it. So, yeah, I mean, there's several reasons that it could be for sure. And Claire says, up here, Claire said, I agree. Sounds like a setup. Who are they actually covering up for? So here's the thing. It's hard to, sometimes I even get lost in it. I forget sometimes that none of these assaults ever occurred. So there's no covering up of anything because none of the assaults ever occurred. And the whole thing of Janie Liggins, the first lady that night, she made an allegation that was disproven really by the lack of evidence, a 100% lack of evidence. And that is as in DNA and fingerprints and, description, things like that. Nothing that she said in her allegation was able to be proven. Everything was disproven, in fact. So there's really no crime at all anywhere. But Kim Davis is just, she says that she immediately believed Janie Liggins when she went to interview her at the hospital. She immediately believed her, what she was telling her about being, Janie Liggins calls it rape. Her charge was actually oral sodomy against him. But anyway, she claims that this happened, and then there was no evidence. Like, if he did indeed put his penis in her mouth, even for 2 or 3 seconds or 10 seconds, whichever story you're listening to her tell at the time, there's no DNA evidence whatsoever in her oral rinse when she gets her SANE test at the hospital. there are no fingerprints of hers on his car where she says that there should have been fingerprints and handprints. Nothing.
Why did we were reading some trial transcript again yesterday, and Kim Davis was trying to explain away why Daniel's DNA, and it shouldn't just be Daniel's DNA, because he was accused of assaulting 3 women in his final shift, and so he should have had all their DNA in her mouth, or some of them, or partial profiles or something. But she explains at trial that,
Oh God. Ugh.
well, I mean, if she swallowed the skin cell, then the DNA would be gone. Okay.
You're like, what?
Seriously? What else? The other stupid thing she said
The thing about the vasectomy.
that wouldn't there be DNA if he ejaculated? Not if he had had a vasectomy. Like, okay, he was 27. Do you think he had a vasectomy? Probably not.
Yeah.
She's
So
just dumb as a post, man.
yeah. So that's I even get stuck in that. Sometimes I forget there was actually no crime, and nobody had committed a crime that was being that needed to be covered up by anybody, by law enforcement, detectives, judges, by anybody. So all of these detectives going out and finding all of these women who Daniel had ran in his computer system, and they could find evidence that he had had contact with them. They went to all of these women. Now there's anywhere, depending on what report or what testimony you believe, there's anywhere from 25 or 30 to 40 women who they approached, who said nothing ever happened. No contact like that ever happened when they had their contact with a police officer. So they couldn't. Now, at some point, when they take Daniel's uniform pants after the interrogation on June 18th, they do find, or they claim to find a DNA evidence on his pants of a female, a partial profile of an unknown female. So Kim Davis will tell you that's why they're out looking for. That's why they keep finding all these victims. We'd go out looking for the one, all these women that he ran, and there's, none of them are matching this DNA profile. Well, Mike, I had 2 things about that. If there was DNA on the same uniform pants, he wore the same uniform pants when he got off of work at 2 a.m. on June 18th in the morning. He went home, he slept, he did whatever, he got up the next day, did whatever, then showered and whatever his thing was. And then he put on clean clothes, but he put on the same uniform pants that he had worn the night before. So here's part of my theory that is stuck in my head. There were 3 other women. I would have thought that once they determined that there was DNA, a partial profile of a female's DNA on his uniform pants, my thought was, well, then why didn't they just go from Janie Liggins to the stop before her and the stop before her? And then if they still didn't find a match, then the stop before that one, and so on and so forth. Because if they had done that, which to me is logical, there would have only been Janie Liggins and Kayla Lyles and Adara Gardner, because Adara Gardner was the DNA that was allegedly found on his pants. And that was the third to the last pat search or search that he had done on a female that night before Janie Liggins was pulled over. So to me, that's very logical to do that. But they didn't do that.
I know you're misspeaking, because we do this all the time on a live, and then you go back and listen and think, why did I say that? You're saying a partial profile. Adara Gardner's profile was a full profile. There were other partial profiles. There were at least, was it at least 3 partial profiles?
Yeah. Well, and that's why I have you here.
Well, I mean, I do it all the time. It makes me so mad when I listen back and I said something incorrectly that I know.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you. I'm glad that you do because I don't want to give the wrong information. Yeah, thanks, Claire. I know you've got stuff going on, so thanks for being here and enjoy dinner and have a couple bites for me. Have a good night, Claire.
But guys, back to why did they do this to him? I mean, they're watching the riots firing up all around the United States. Zimmerman down in the Trayvon Martin case down in Florida, Zimmerman, they don't, Zimmerman gets off. That caused riots. Before, well, Daniel got arrested. By the time Daniel got arrested, Ferguson had happened. We know what happened in Ferguson. I can't remember how much damage they did to that city. I need to write that down so I can commit it to memory. But I mean, they destroyed that city. The chief of police ended up having to resign. Our chief of police didn't want to have to resign. He didn't want to be put in a situation like that. They were just putting out a fire before a fire happened.
Right.
It wasn't Daniel necessarily, but Daniel had use of force investigations, most of them that he had self-reported. For those of you that don't understand the definition of use of force, like I did not, it is anything greater than placing the cuffs on. I always thought you had to knock the hell out of someone, but that's not what use of force is. So he had those things that were going to be, they were going to be put out there in the media. You know how the media does, how the media sensationalizes things. They just didn't want to deal with that. They didn't want to have to deal with the riots as a police department. It was easier to sacrifice an officer, I believe, than to have to deal with all of that crap. If it would have been a different officer, I think they would have done it to a different officer.
I agree. Yep. But you've got this black woman who's made an allegation, whether it's true or not. And yeah, Bill City, the chief of police at that time, was not about to have his city become another Ferguson. So yeah, I agree. It doesn't matter it could have been any officer. It just happened to be Daniel, unfortunately.
It doesn't look good if you pull somebody over after work and your computer's turned off. That doesn't look good. It doesn't sound good. It wasn't good.
Right.
He did that. That was stupid. Yeah. And he's sitting in prison.
Yeah, and it's helped keep him in prison. So, but yeah, so I mean, this is why it's so hard to cover Daniel's case, because it's so hard to talk about one accuser at a time without falling down a rabbit hole because something connects to it and takes you off into a whole other rabbit hole. It's really, really difficult. And I knew that it would be tough.
And Daniel's defense, though, that was just a new rule that came in, was it not? Because he was used to switching off his computer at night and things like that on his way home. And it was a new rule. So, or have I picked that up wrong, Kay?
No, you've got that right.
No, that's
it
right.
was a new rule, but still the stupidity of pulling someone over and not turning your computer back on.
Yeah.
Calling it in.
Almost, Daniel described it as, in hindsight, as, I guess I was too cocky. I never thought of myself as cocky, but sitting in prison, I guess looking back on it, he realizes that, him taking that action and checking out to see if she was 3 sheets to the wind before he went on home, that he he decided that he could just pull her over and check her out and let her go, and it would all be good. Shouldn't have done it.
No. But how many other police officers had done that before as well, you know, and nothing happened? And it's just so unfortunate that Daniel decided to do it. And yeah, he's in the place that he is, and he's had plenty of time to think about it. And as you say, I mean, because he was up and coming in the police force, you know what I mean? And he probably wanted to be as high up as his dad and his mum at some point, you know. So yeah, he might have been a bit cocky, but for him to be able to maybe sit back now and say that that's probably one of the reasons why he is where he is, I mean, that takes a lot for him to realize himself, you know.
Well, they did treat him like a golden boy, you know, and reading through all the emails and stuff, you can see all the accolades they give to him. He got a coveted gang assignment when he was basically a rookie. That does not happen. You know, and I know it was because of his size and his athletic ability. If anyone was ever in a foot chase, who did they want to show up? Holtzclaw. They hoped Holtzclaw, and they knew he would show up. He was always putting himself in the mix. Unlike a lot of officers who, you know, they didn't want to hurry up and go assist on a dangerous call. Daniel was fearless like that.
And rightly so. I mean,
well, he could handle himself. And, you know, I guess you'll have an amount of cockiness when you are so self-assured.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I don't know if that's necessarily cockiness or just being very self-assured in yourself of, you know, that you can handle and you can, invincible, so to speak. And so it's and so here he is now. And, we're all fighting to try to get the proof entered so that we can help him get free and I believe we will. I think it's going to happen. It's just some political changes happening in Oklahoma City, and with us fighting and digging and doing what we're doing to find the proof is what it'll take. But it's so Tabitha Barnes. So Rocky Gregory is the detective that he gets her name from the list or the packet or whatever. So the first time he goes to see her, he doesn't record her when he's talking to her. He takes a report, tries to start writing a report. She admits that, I'm just, I'm really tired because, I was assaulted by a police officer. Because that's the other thing. When most of the time when these investigators would approach a woman, an accuser, they would say, like Alice was saying earlier, I received a tip that you may have been assaulted by an Oklahoma City police officer, or, something to that effect. Very prejudicial right off the bat. And so if you're going to go and do an interview like that, you need, like Kay said in the beginning, it's one of the tools of your job. Take your fucking recorder with you. Take the tools that you need to do that interview with you, so that you don't have a team of armchairs detectives 2 years later sitting here trying to prove why everything you did was wrong and nefarious, because it does look bad that you don't have recordings of especially with Rocky. He's really nefarious and dodgy with his recordings. And so he doesn't record her first interview, but then she tells him, I'm sorry, I was up all night with my screaming grandbaby, which I have no evidence of her having a grandchild. Number one, there's no evidence anywhere that she has a grandchild that she was tending the night before that she didn't get to sleep because of. And so she admits that she had had the baby, was screaming all night the night before, and she took an Ambien, and I'm just really well. See, what that does is that gives her time to work on a story, or to take the little nuggets that Rocky Gregory has given her and create a story and a timeline and all those things. And then he comes back, I think, what was it, like 4 or 5 days later, he finally gets back to her, finally reaches her, and then he's going to record her. So, a whole entire conversation, and we don't know the truth of how long that first conversation took, but a whole other conversation took place days before the actual recording of an interview takes place.
He probably recorded that first one, but it was so messed up that he didn't want to use it. I think they probably recorded a lot of the conversations that they say they didn't record, but many of them may have been exculpatory to Daniel, or they were saying things that, and why they let Sherry Ellis's initial phone call in, where she says it was a short black man, but you'd think they would have ditched that one too.
Yeah. Well, you would think, but then Kim Davis is faced with, oh crap, I knew she was coming. I knew what she was going to tell me. And if I go back and say I don't, but although there were times too that Kim Davis said, yeah, I had to record her, but it something went wrong and it wasn't, all those standard bullshit lies. So, but yeah, Kim Davis was going right to work as fast as she could on Sherry Ellis, because Sherry Ellis had everything Sherry Ellis said about her alleged assault was completely irrefutable as to being Daniel. So,
but something you neglected to point out is, not only did they not record some of the initial interviews, many of the accusers, she or Rocky Gregory contacted their family members or friends first, and I'm sure, I can only imagine those conversations aren't recorded either. Those interviews aren't recorded either. So they had the opportunity to give these people who are going to pass the information along to the accusers anything they wanted to say. So the accusers already had a heads up on what was going on, what the police were going to question them about.
Right.
Yeah.
All kinds of, when guilters, as we say in the Avery Dassey case, when the guilters come along and say, but this and this and this and this, and how could 13 women be lying? And I think he didn't do all the assaults, but I think he did some, all these things. It's just frustrating because, I don't know where my train of thought was going with that, so I'll move on. But my brain is kind of jello right now. But yeah, I agree. There probably was recorders, involved, or recordings involved in a lot of those interviews. But pardon me, excuse me. But yeah, if it didn't sound like it was going to work to their benefit, they had to either delete it or whatever they would do to, make sure that information didn't all get in. So, so Tabitha Barnes makes this accusation, and then she says he comes. So that was all on February 27th. There was contact, but it was a basic contact, just a stop, a pat search, a backhand pat search, and he gets her in the back of the patrol car, and he asks her questions about drug activity, and are you a working girl? Do you know about any drug activity? And the thing about Tabitha Barnes is her house was a known crack house in the area. There, and that even comes out in trial.
Daniel was watching.
That Daniel was watching. Yeah. So, so it's not like, so when he's asking her questions about, any possible drug activity in the area or the neighborhood, or he's asking her very legitimate questions that a patrol officer in his position would be asking anybody, male or female, black, white, yellow, green, pink, whatever. doesn't matter. He would have, those are the same questions he would ask anybody in that situation. So so the whole thing, so the thing happens, the accusation from the 27th in the middle of the night happens. And then on March 25th, he comes back, which he did. He came back around on the 25th and, drove by. Was there any contact on the 25th? I don't think there was. I know she says there was contact, but I don't know if there's actually proof of any contact with her on the 25th other than, I don't remember. Do you remember, Cherie or Kay?
I can't remember either. I haven't been inside
I haven't looked at
Tabitha
her.
Barnes in a while.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were doing this tonight.
What do you mean you didn't know I was doing this tonight?
Well, I mean, before we were into what we were doing all day today, I didn't realize ahead of time to refresh on this.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
and that's me too.
So overwhelming, man, that you can't keep all 13 of these, all the facts inside your head all the time.
All the time. Yeah, I agree. I'm not judging you. Trust me. Well, anyway, whether he actually had contact with her or not on the 25th of March, I don't think there's any proof, but she has a story. She has she's created a story because, by now Rocky Gregory's let her know, well, he had contact with you twice on the February 27th. And then we know that he had contact with you on March 25th. What happened on March 25th, kind of way to approach her. And so she has a story for what happened on March 25th. And I don't believe her story says that there was any assaults or anything that occurred on the 25th, but she claims that he went into her house when she wasn't there, and he broke into her house and went in and did a search, which isn't true. When he drove by that night, on that shift on the 25th, and I think this is how the 25th happens. He drives by and he sees that the front door is open, but that there's nobody home, like their car is not there.
It was actually kicked in.
It was kicked in, right? So he stops and he doing a welfare check perhaps, or checking to see if there is somebody in there illegally, because don't forget, just 3 weeks earlier, the house had been broken into. So, when he sees the door kicked in, so he's going to go check. Well, then he goes in, and this house is very tiny. It's a 2-bedroom, very, very tiny house. And he goes in and he sees a man sleeping in, was either her bed or the bed in the kids' room. But anyway, there's a man sleeping there, and this turns out to be her boyfriend, and he's a registered sex offender. Registered sex offender. So Daniel runs him, and all those things, and he doesn't go in and search for drugs. He doesn't toss the place, but he just wants to make sure that everybody in the house is safe because of the way the house appeared when he drove by. So so that happens. Well, then Tabitha Barnes claims that she comes home right after he exits the home, and he's sitting on the front porch. And she says when she drives up, this is so bizarre. She says that when she drives up to her home, that there's this black man laying in her front yard, like passed out in her front yard by a tree or something. And she says she walks up to Holtzclaw, or she gets out of her car, and Holtzclaw tells her, "Come here." And he's sitting on her porch waiting for her, and tells her, "Come here." And she says she walks up and says, "Who's this on my front lawn?" And he says whatever, and she says, "Well, he don't belong here." So she says that Daniel then gets up off the porch, walks over and kicks the guy and tells him, "Get out of here, you don't belong here," or something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. So just really bizarre. I mean, like, what is the point of telling something that there's no proof of actually occurring? So, but her complaint on this day is that he went into her home, broke into her home, and did an illegal search of her home, which was not the case. And then the stalking thing happens the next day. She claims the very next day she was really upset because of the 27th and then the 25th, and she's in the kitchen. Well, she's got a few different stories depending on which testimony you're listening to, but she's in the kitchen cooking dinner for her babies, and she's on the phone with her mom. In one story, she's on the phone with her mom who lives in Texas. Then one of the other stories, she's not on the phone. But when Daniel walks up and pounds on her door and he's saying, let me in, which is just bizarre. And in this instance, she's saying that the patrol car he's driving in this particular, the very next day, is an older Crown Vic black and white car. And the day before and the 27th, he's driving the newer, I can't remember what the name of the car was, but it was one of the new Oklahoma patrol cars. And those were all black with white lettering on the side that said police. But then in this third incident, the very next day, she says, oh, he was driving the old black and white one. And he's pounding on my door, telling me, let me in. Are you going to let me in to search your house? And she's telling him, no, I'm not letting you in. She says she calls her mama in Texas. And I called my mama, and my mama got on the phone with him, and she told, and all this craziness and that's where the stalking charge comes from, is the 25th and the 27th, or the 25th and the 26th. So then she says that in one of her trial testimonies during this incident, she claims that he came up and he pounded on the door, but she wasn't even there. She wasn't even living there. The very next day, she had boarded up the house, boarded up the windows, kept paying the rent, and moved to Texas to be with her mom because she was so terrified. The very next day, she did all of that, and then the very next day left. So, her stories just don't add up at all.
And then that story ends up, I guess she forgot she told that story, because down the road, was it in her deposition where she says that she had to leave because her mom was really sick and she had to go take care of her mom down in Texas for 6 months or something.
Yeah, that was her
deposition.
deposition.
She forgot which story she told.
Yeah.
She also, when Daniel was had the gang assignment, the gang member or the gang unit, some of the members used to do this $20 bill thing where they would use a $20 bill in the back seat of the car to see if people were honest, or if they would just take the 20 and put it in their pocket, or if they took it and put it in their pocket and he asked him about the 20 that was in the back seat, if they would give it back to him or deny that they had it. So she takes the 20 and he asked about it, and she's trying to explain to the detectives that story.
Yeah.
And she forgets that she said she didn't have a bra on, and she said, I had a 20 in my bra. Like, oh,
Yeah.
wait, but you didn't have a bra on is the thing. It's like, so she could never keep her story straight.
Yeah. And
And
that
her
comes
things
out.
were just like you said, so outlandish, her stories.
Yeah. And the bra thing comes out between the inconsistency on the bra thing come out between the police report, preliminary hearing, and trial testimony. You're getting a different story about whether or not she was wearing a bra that night. So just, it's just, she was really, really, really crazy with her story, or her 3 stories.
Most of the accusers were, though, they
Yeah.
didn't have consistent stories all the way through. It would
Right.
change. It would change from the police report to prelim. And by the time they got to trial, they pretty much were all on the same page, except for some of the women who just refused to change a detail that the detectives really wanted them to change.
Right. Right. Now, well, the reason that I feel like Tabitha's was worse than some of the others is because she claimed 3 incidents, and so and they're just, I don't know, they're just outrageous, that they're just outrageous stories that she claims. And now that I'm thinking about it, because I know Cherie and I laughed about this a lot when we were doing a lot of research on Tabitha Barnes a while back. Now I remember that the story, I got the 27th mixed up, like I kind of was thinking I might have. What happened was the 12 o'clock incident happened it was a little after midnight from the 26th into the 27th. So the first incident was around, I think it was like 11 after midnight on the 27th, on the morning of the 27th. And then it was the burglary that occurred later, almost 24 hours later at 10 p.m. that following night on the 27th. And the reason I just remembered that, and Cherie will back me up on this because we just thought it was hysterical. We made all kinds of jokes about it. So she claims she tells Rocky Gregory that all of these, the breasts and the, showing her crotch and all that stuff happened in the midnight hour of the 27th. And then at 10 p.m. or so, later that night, she has an opportunity when the house is burglarized. A female officer is in the house, helping the family go through the house to see what else might have been stolen. And she's in there with a female officer where she's got a perfect opportunity to tell the female officer, hey, nearly 24 hours ago, this one cop that's here tonight, he sexually assaulted me. But she doesn't do that, so why would you not do that? Nearly 24 hours later, after you've been sexually assaulted, why wouldn't you grab that female officer that you're alone in your house with at that point and tell them, hey, that cop that's out there, he sexually assaulted me at 12 o'clock last night or whatever. And so, Cherie and we made a joke about that quite a while. And so I did get those backwards. I did get the events mixed up. So speaking of Cherie, Alice, Jack, Cherie, would you guys please chime in and say something? Cherie, Kay and I have been talking all day.
Blah, blah, blah.
I remember one time Tabitha said he eye contact me. I don't know if that was when the female officer was there. That's why she says she didn't say anything, because he eye contact her. I didn't know that was a verb, but okay.
Yeah, he eye contacted her. He gave her eyes, and that's right. Thank you, Cherie. I knew that's why I needed you to say something, because that's what she said, that he made eye contact with her and gave her the eyes. And so she said that he eye contacted me, so I was too scared to say anything to the female officer in the house. So yeah.
This is a learning kind of thing for me. I know it's weird, but there's in this case, because there's so many different ones, I'm not I can't keep them all straight, and I don't know enough about them to really comment. I mean, other than just some of the stuff is just insane, but I've just been sitting here listening and learning. So thank you.
Yeah. No, you're welcome. Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. Well, and that's what this is about, and I always invite you on the panel because it's like you said last week, it's your fault I'm even into it. So, so you get to suffer through me.
Also, Ron, do you remember why didn't anything happen between Daniel and Tabitha? I'm being smart here, but when Venegas, when other officers were around, I think it was during the burglary. Why didn't anything happen then? Do you remember?
Because I know there's something. That's why I need you to tell me, because I can't remember.
He had to restrain himself.
Oh, yes.
Officers were around.
Yes, he had to restrain himself on that second stop because there was too many other people around that night. So he couldn't touch her. He couldn't assault her that night, that second time. Yeah,
Rocky says that right in the report. So yes. It's true.
Yeah, so it's true. Yeah, that's part of the report. So,
hey, Jack, to your point about not being able to keep this all straight, can you imagine how the jury felt?
Yeah, it's really to the point of ridiculous. And on top of that, all the other bullshit that you guys talked about a little while ago with Ferguson and these different things going on in the country at the time, add that to it. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And in reality, wasn't there actually 21 defendants or witnesses, victims, whatever? 21, 23?
Accusers? No, I mean, there's all kinds of different people say different numbers, but
But no,
well,
I mean, a bunch of them got eliminated. They were
right,
like,
right, right,
nah,
yeah,
Their
Yeah.
they were after a
stories were
paycheck.
so unbelievable that they
Right.
couldn't
Yeah,
make a case out of it. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Right.
hard to imagine that someone's story. Well, here's the thing, that they didn't have AVL GPS to back it up. So
Right.
they weren't going to be able to make those cases fly.
right.
Those women didn't realize they were reverse engineering the cases. I mean,
Yeah.
that they couldn't
No,
just
they were.
come forward and say, hey, this happened to me, blah, blah, blah. They didn't know how the police were putting this together.
Well, yeah, they wanted to use Oklahoma City as an ATM, bank
Yeah.
card.
Yep, definitely. Well, yeah, exactly. So, oh gosh, there's a gazillion details that we're leaving out about Tabitha Barnes, but she comes to one of the things that's really, again, to get like more details from the first two incidents. Definitely, and I think Alice or somebody has put them dropped the links in the chat a couple times, but go back and watch Tabitha Barnes Part 1 and Tabitha Barnes Part 2, and it will give you a little more detail as to what what we're talking about here tonight, because it's so much that it's, I feel like everything is important, but I don't have time to do everything. But something that's really a big deal, and this is probably one of the only things that you can find an accuser, so to speak, to be willing to admit was really crazy, is that Tabitha Barnes, she was so messed up. Tabitha Barnes showed up to trial she testified, I think, 2 days, and she showed up to testify. The second day she showed up to testify, she refused to testify the second day. And so they had to go find her, and they had to track her down. And Oklahoma City had paid for all of their lodging because she didn't live in Oklahoma City at the time. She was in Texas. And so Oklahoma City had, paid for her to get to Oklahoma for trial, and paid for her lodging for her and her sister, I believe it was, a couple different hotel rooms. And she gets in the hotel room and just makes a mess, I guess. And then she leaves the hotel room. She testified the first day. She leaves the hotel room that night, and they can't find her the next day when she's supposed to do her second day of testifying. So they finally track her down. They find her. They bring her home. They bring her back because she's refusing to testify. They bring her back, and they get her on the stand. And I believe it. I don't remember which attorney. I want to say it was Scott Adams' defense, but I don't remember exactly. But they determine that she's under the influence of something. So they go through this big long thing in the trial. They dismiss the jury, and they have this big long conversation and in-camera hearings and blah blah blah. And they determine that, well, let's do a drug test on her, and let's see if she's got something in her system. Turns out she was on PCP. So she's already started testifying the second day, and she's on PCP, and that's determined through drug tests. And so, but she, initially she tells the judge, no, if you test me, I'm going to be clean. And then she comes back and says, no, if you test me, I'm going to be dirty, but it's going to be her prescription drugs that are going to show up, her Xanax and her Seroquel and whatever else things she claims that she was on. And then, and I smoked some pot too. So you're probably going to find some THC in my system. So, but that's all. Well, then when they drug test her, it's determined that she's got PCP in her system. So
she's kind of like a walking drugstore.
Kind of, yeah.
It's crap.
Kind of, yeah. And it's just crazy because that is something that a lot of people that know about that from the trial I think that was even on the news during the trial. It was something that was mentioned, in a news report probably, but that was made to be kind of common knowledge. And so, there was a lot of crap for her showing up to testify high on PCP as well as other drugs. So anyway, they find, and she is just so belligerent, and most of them were to a degree really hostile and really, but this bitch, she was crazy belligerent. Sorry, I should not have said that word. I'm sorry. But hey, I just am who I am, and I'm really sorry. And if the Holtzclaws happen to listen to this or anybody, I apologize. Please forgive me for saying those words. But anyway, she finally testifies, but she's really
oftentimes it's really difficult because this case is so polarizing. It's hard to withhold the emotion. It is.
it is. It
There's
is.
that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that pass. I need all the passes I can get. Robsky says, I'm so sorry I missed this. Well past my bedtime, so I'm going to have to hit the sack. I'll pause the stream and finish watching in the morning. Thanks to everyone. Thank you, Robsky. Yes, go get some rest. You need rest before you listen to some of this shit. So go get some rest, all the rest you need. And thank you for being here. I appreciate your support. So she testifies. She's very belligerent, very hostile, very snarky and bitchy, and just downright hateful. And they get through the trial. And anyway, she claims, like I said, she did claim that she had been taking her anti-psych medicines and all that stuff. So, but she still, even though her testimony has so many inconsistencies between between police report, like I said, police report, prelim, trial, and then deposition, that they definitely need to take some serious looks at the accusations of her. So this is kind of where, unless Kay or Cherie would like to add anything else, or anybody else, what I'm going to do at this point, and I think a lot of you have already seen it, but I'm going to show it every chance I get, a video clip that I made from the deposition of Tabitha Barnes, where she completely contradicts what she said in her police report from the first incident, the second incident, I guess, February 27th incident. The first incident. Anyway, it doesn't matter. From that incident where she says he touched her bare breast with his bare hands and made her show him her crotch. The difference between that report, preliminary testimony, trial testimony, and then deposition, completely opposite things. So this was actually played on the news in Oklahoma City, or Oklahoma. I don't recall the exact date. I think it was sometime in May. I want to say May 8th for some reason. But Daniel was up for, this is also gets people really wacky and confused, but he has 36 different charges that he's serving time on, or 18 different charges that he's serving time on. And each of those charges has a different amount of years that he does for that particular crime, because these are all run consecutive. So he comes up for parole on the sexual battery charge for Tabitha Barnes, from when he allegedly touched her breasts and made her show her private parts to him. So he comes up from parole, and he's got 8 years on that one charge that he's serving. So when we say he's coming up for parole on that, he's only coming up for parole on that charge and that 8, to get rid of that 8 years off of his 263-year sentence. So that's all it really means, if that makes sense. So in May, I believe it was in May or March, whenever he was coming up for parole on this is when I volunteered to make a video clip for Daniel's team, of something in the deposition that she says that completely refutes what she says happened in the midnight hour of February 27th. So before I show that, is there anybody that would like to make any other comments, or bring any other points or questions or comments from anybody in the chat? Because when I show this, then I'm going to kind of wrap it up with Tabitha Barnes at this point. But
I stepped away for a minute. When you were talking about Tabitha at court testifying, did you talk about, she is the accuser so she testified in the morning, and then her testimony was, did you talk about them detaining her at lunch?
Oh, I didn't mention the detainment, but I did talk about doing the drug test and everything.
Yeah, that's so bizarre that, she was being so combative that they ended up drug testing her at lunch, and then they detained her because they were afraid she wasn't going to come back and complete her testimony. But there's no record. We tried to get a police report or a sheriff's department report from what they did with her while they had her detained over lunch, and none exists. Just
There
thought
was
that was really
nothing.
interesting.
Yeah,
They needed her testimony.
they did. Wacky and stupid and crazy as it was, and unbelievable as it was. Yep, they sure did. Yeah, thank you, Kay, for that part too. Cherie or Alice, anything you want to add to Tabitha Barnes?
I think you covered it pretty well.
It's
Yeah,
hard.
the only thing I've got to say is nut job.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's definitely nut job, and I plan to do as events allow. Whenever I'm asked, if I'm asked again to do because I have one for Sherry Ellis as well, video clips, from whatever we can get to show proof to the media that and thus to the public that things aren't all that they all seem to be with these accusers. So so far there's two. There's one for Tabitha Barnes and one for Sherry Ellis, and I'm really looking forward to the time when we can put together some more and get those tweeting and out on YouTube and shared, because it's just one way that we're going to be able to get this information out about the truth, and then the lies and the convoluted stories and narration that these guys all gave regarding Daniel's the false allegations made against Daniel. So
The problem with this case, the biggest problem with it, is that the public responds to it from an emotional standpoint because of the nature of the charges. They're so horrible. If someone really did all the things that he's accused of, it's so horrific. And
right.
So when people hear that and they think, 13 women couldn't be lying,
Right.
not knowing how the case was manufactured, all of the feelings of him being guilty, they just come from emotion. And
Right.
unfortunately, emotions were really high in the summer of 2014. I remember it vividly.
Yeah.
And I wasn't involved in this case then.
Right. Yeah. There. Yeah. Great point. Great point. Thank you, Shaz, for being here. I'm glad you were able to catch us mostly all live. We just have this clip that we're going to show, and then we'll maybe some last comments, and then we're going to wrap up anyway. So you won't be missing much. And I know you've seen the clip before, and I know it drives you crazy. So you probably should just go and have some peace, Shaz. Have a good night, and we'll see you next time. And thanks for being here. Okay, so with that said, since we're going to go ahead, and I'm going to play this little video clip. And like I said, as soon as I'm able to, I will make more with more.
How many times did Holtzclaw?
Hold on. What I want to say first is, and I think I've explained this before when I've shown it, but the first person that you're going to hear talking is Amber Gooch, and she's one of the attorneys for, I think it's for Brian Bennett. I think it's Brian Bennett was one of the officers that is named in the civil suit at the time. So this is Amber Gooch, and then the next male attorney that you will hear is Richard Smith, or Rick Smith, or as Cherie and I usually refer to him, Dick Smith. And he is the attorney for Oklahoma City, and I think Chief Bill City, and I think Rocky Gregory, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. See, I'm getting better with some of these things. So you're going to hear him now. After Amber Gooch, you'll hear Rick Smith, and then after Rick Smith, you will hear Kathleen Zellner question Tabitha Barnes at the end. So I always like to make sure when we get to hear Kathleen Zellner, I like to make sure I point that out in case somebody doesn't recognize her voice. So, okay, with all that being said, we're going to go ahead and make sure the volume is where it needs to be. I'll turn it up over here on my end. And we'll play this little clip for you guys.
How many times did Holtzclaw touch you inappropriately?
He didn't touch me.
He never touched you?
No.
Next to the third to the last line says, Holtzclaw then asked Plaintiff Barnes if there was anything under her breast and fondled Plaintiff Barnes's naked breast. Do you see that?
You just read it. Yes, I see it, sir.
Isn't that different than what you testified today?
What do you mean is that different?
Didn't you say Holtzclaw didn't touch you?
He didn't touch me.
So this is a mistake.
He did not touch me.
Okay, and if you go back to Defendant's Exhibit number 11, which is the information, count 1.
Go ahead.
5 lines from the bottom of count 1, directing TB to expose her breast and then touching her bare breast with his hand without her consent. That's also a mistake.
He didn't touch me.
Okay? And you understand that Mr. Holtzclaw was convicted of sexual battery on that count as a result of your testimony?
Yes.
So that would have been a lie?
What would have been a lie?
The fact that he was charged with touching you.
I don't know what he was charged with. I know he was charged with 3 counts of me exposing myself.
Okay.
Just one further question, Ms. Barnes. You would agree, would you not, that you have to be 100% truthful about what you've told us today for you to prevail in your lawsuit?
Yes.
Okay. And you've been 100% truthful with us today about everything that you claimed?
Yeah,
You haven't lied to us, right?
No. Everything that I remember is what I remember. That's what I'm telling you.
So, that is just, I just spent a lot of time telling you over and over and over again about Daniel, her claiming on the 27th of February in the midnight hour that Daniel cupped both of her bare breasts with his bare hands, and she testified. She wrote that and she put that in her police report. It's in the preliminary. It's in trial testimony, and then here in her deposition, she says 5 times when questioned about it, he did not touch me, and she's just very flippant when she's asked how. Do you realize that he was charged and got 8 years on that count? And was that a mistake? Did you lie about? No, I'm not. I didn't lie. I'm not lying. He didn't touch me. It's just mind-boggling, and just and the attorneys at this point, I would love to have been a fly on the wall in that room because they were all probably losing their minds. Like, oh my God, that every single one of them had to know that was, oh God, I can't even say it now. Expultory or whatever information that should have exculpated.
Exculpatory.
God, we can't even talk anymore. Our brains are jello.
I can
yeah,
corroborate. I'm
for sure.
corroborating that.
Hey, I've read that word twice in the last couple of days, and I look at it and I've read it perfectly clear, didn't I, Kay? I was very proud. So maybe I'm recovering from that issue. I doubt it, but just got lucky. Anyway, yeah. So, and she just doesn't care. Dick Smith asks her, "So, do you realize that he's serving 8 years on those charges?" She's like, "Yeah." So, like, and what's your point? And then she makes the really weird comment that I know that he was charged with 3 counts of me exposing myself. So I would call that uncredible. She's not a credible witness or a credible, God damn it, credible. Sorry for that G word too. Gah! Credible accuser, because she can't even keep her damn story straight. So anyway, it's just astounding that she said that, and I thought it was really great that at the end that Kathleen Zellner's like, whoa, this is huge, because at that time, she's not now, and hopefully it'd be great if she could again, but at that time she was representing Daniel in his case. And so I can just imagine when she heard that, she had to have been really, really excited to hear.
Can I say she couldn't keep Rocky and Kim's story straight? Would that be more?
Oh yeah, that would be more accurate. Yeah, she couldn't keep Rocky's story straight. You're right.
Right.
Tabitha.
Yeah. Exactly.
Very good. Very good. Good one, Jack. So yeah, Kathleen Zellner must have just been ready to jump out of her seat. She must have been, woohoo! Let's get this on the record somehow and out in the public, or in a civil trial or in a post-conviction trial or something. So, but like I said, I imagine there will be more clips like that to come. There are so many other clips that I would love to make of Tabitha Barnes to show her being uncredible, and her hostility towards Dick Smith, the city attorney, is unbelievable. She's not hostile with Amber Gooch, really, and she's really not hostile at all with Kathleen Zellner, but she is really hostile with Richard Smith. He's just a jerk. He really is. I mean, there's a reason we call him Dick Smith instead of Rick or Richard. So, but anyway, so I'm going to leave you with that tonight. All that stuff that she claims. Try to watch the first 2 podcasts that I did about Tabitha Barnes, and then maybe that'll help what I've shared tonight make a little more sense. But I don't know exactly yet who we're going to talk about next. I can't remember who comes next in line in the accusations. And if you haven't already, there's a 3-part series on Terry Morris, which is really good. Lots of information, lots of detail. And when you're watching those older videos, by the way, and older slides and whatnot, remember, I was very, very new, and I'm getting a little bit better with recordings and slides and things like that as I get more experience. But some of those earlier ones might be a little difficult to watch and get through, but there's definitely some good information, especially in the Terry Morris ones, if you get a chance to watch those, if you haven't already.
I think Florine Mathis is next. At least I was just looking at Brian Bates' podcast, and she comes next, I think, after Tabitha in his podcast.
Oh, okay.
And I think he tried to do it in order of how they prosecuted it or investigated it or whatever.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, well, and if it is Florine Mathis, it'll be pretty quick because her stories.
Speaking of Brian Bates, Jenny did talk to him about that because the podcast has been down. His podcast, Daniel, what is it? Bates Investigates. It's been down. He was making some updates to some of the episodes. So he said it should be back up in the next day or so.
Oh, okay.
So if you're trying to watch Brian Bates' podcast and it says unavailable, that is why.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, that's sorry, I'm trying to answer a message here really quick. Yeah. So I hadn't mentioned that yet, that those were down, because I was like, oh, I didn't want to mention anything until I knew why. So, yeah, that's good that they'll be back up, because they're so informational. There's so much, and a lot of the information that we've used in those podcasts, in my previous podcasts, and ones I'll do in the future, especially if they're coming back up. A lot of that information I get from his holtzclawtrial.com website. So that's good to know. You still can go to his website and you can click on the home pages for each accuser too. They don't have the videos or the podcast, but you can see some police reports and photos and things like that in the home pages of each of the accusers. If you just want to kind of read ahead and get familiar with some of the police reports and stuff too. So, because I think that's helpful, even though it's mostly all lies, it's helpful to kind of know what we're trying to say. So, okay. Well, let's see. I think I don't see any comments or questions in the chat. And I know it's been a long day for some of us that have been reading for the last 3 days. So if there's not any other comments or any other questions, everybody want to say their own goodbyes or whatever? And Alice, do you want to say anything to add at the end here?
Just thank you to everybody in chat who's came along. We couldn't do it without you, and please go and check out the links that I've posted tonight, and you should be able to get caught up with quite a bit of what we've been saying.
Yep.
Ciao now.
All right. Any last comments from I don't recall?
Well, thanks for the refresher on Tabitha, painful as it is to listen to, and thanks for coming, everybody.
Yep. Thank you. Jack, do you have any last comments?
Thanks for, I guess, a little more education about Tabitha, and appreciate everyone coming. Thanks for the invite.
Always, of course. And Kay, are you all talked out already for the day?
I said ciao now.
Oh, so sorry, I didn't hear you. Ciao, baby. All right. Well, that will end us for tonight's podcast, and we'll come back next week with one of the next accuser in line. And until then, peace out.